Alright, so let's talk about reaction mechanism. So reaction mechanism is a series of events where the reactants are converted to products. So these are the main words that you have to deal with. Right, so the reactants and then the products. The reactants are actually the raw materials or the starting materials in a chemical reaction. So again, reactants are the raw materials, okay, to start a chemical reaction, while the product, this is the result. Okay, now for example, we have species A plus species B forms a new species which is called AB. Or let us have, let's say, zinc reacts with sulfur, it forms zinc sulfide. Before we continue, I would like you to familiarize yourselves with the following terms. Okay, so you have to remember the terms. The first one is the overall reaction, otherwise called as the complex reaction. Okay, complex reaction. And then the elementary steps. The elementary step is a series of individual reaction or simple steps that forms the complex reaction or the overall reaction. Okay, but while the intermediate is actually a substance or species that are formed in one step, but consumed in the next step. Okay, so in order for you to understand this, I will show an example later, okay, using the one in your textbook. But first, let me use an analogy for these two: overall reaction and then the elementary step. So again, overall reaction, also known as the complex reaction, is actually the result or the resulting product, right? While the elementary steps, these are the series of events that leads to the formation of complex reaction. It is like watching the boxing of Pacquiao and Mayweather. Like, for example, one of your friends who isn't able to watch it asks you who won the boxing fight between Mayweather and Pacquiao, and then you will tell him Mayweather won. So that event is the resulting product. Okay, but if your friends want to find out the blow-by-blow account, okay, how did Mayweather earn the points to win, okay, the boxing match, is or refers to the elementary steps. Okay, so now let's go to intermediate so that you can see what are the species or substances can be considered as intermediate and where do they appear in the elementary steps. Now let us have the example given in your textbook, okay, so that we can see how does 2N2O plus O2 forms 2N2O appear by examining these steps or elementary steps. We can also find out the intermediate species intermediate species given in this elementary step. So we can call this reaction as our elementary step number 1, and then this second reaction as our elementary step number 2. Now as you can see, the N2O2 plus O2 forms 2NO2 is actually our overall reaction. Okay, that is our result or our complex reaction. Okay, so again, how did this reaction, okay, became like this is we can see by examining the elementary steps 1 and 2. Okay, now what we can do here is we can add up the reaction, okay, by eliminating also the one that appears in the reactant. This is the reactant, and the one that is also appeared in the product. So meaning if a species appear in the reactant and also appeared in the product, we can eliminate it, right? So like for this example, for step 1 and step 2, we can see that N2O2 appeared in the product and it also appeared in the reactant. So we can cancel it like this, and then there's no more species that appear in both sides of the equation. So what is left now is 2NO, this one, 2NO plus O2 yields to 2 moles of NO2, right? So this is how the overall reaction or the complex reaction was taken. Okay, it comes from these elementary steps. You will also observe the one that we canceled, the N2O2, is our intermediate, right? Now, what do we mean by intermediate species again? Intermediates are the species, okay, that appeared, number one, as a product, and then they are going to be consumed or used, right? So that's why they disappear in the overall reaction, right? So we cannot see an intermediate species that occurs in a complex or overall reaction. Okay, let's have another example. Right, so this is again our complex reaction or our overall reaction. Overall reaction. And as you can see, we have two steps. This is the elementary step number 1. Okay, and then our elementary step number 2. So how did we able to come up with this? So let us add these two elementary steps. Okay, but first we have to eliminate those species that appeared in the reactant also, or that also appeared in the product side, right? So let's examine it. So here we can see that oxygen appeared in the reactant and oxygen appeared in the product, right? So there's no more that we can eliminate. So let's add up all together. We have one O3 here and another O3 in the second step. So we can write it as 2O3 yields to, what is left in the product is 1 O2 oxygen and 2 O2 oxygen. So that becomes 3 O2. Okay, as you can see, this is how we get the complex or the overall reaction. And our intermediate here, our intermediate species here is the oxygen. Why? Because it appeared as a product, and then second one is it is used. Again, that is our clue for intermediate species. It becomes a product and then it is consumed or used up. And of course, if it's an intermediate, it will not appear in the overall reaction, right? Okay, another example. For example number 3, we have 3 different elementary steps. We have step 1, we have step 2, and our step 3. As you can see, the overall or the complex reaction is not yet given. So we have to determine it by adding all these 3 elementary steps. But first, let's try to eliminate those intermediate species. Okay, intermediate species are the species that appeared as a product and then used in the reactants. Okay, so they will be disappeared and will not appear or should not appear in the complex reaction, right? So by examining these elementary steps, we can see that N2O2 appeared as a product and as a reactant. Okay, and we can see that N2O appeared in the product. Okay, again, this is the product side and this is the reactant side. N2O in the product and N2O in the reactant, right? So can we cancel H2 here and H2 at the third step? We cannot, because they both belong in the reactant side. Same goes with the product. Okay, the water here on the second step and the water in the step 3, okay, we cannot eliminate these two, or we cannot cancel these two, right? Because they belong in the same group, which is the product. Alright, so let's find out okay, the overall or the complex reaction. So we have 2NO plus, how many hydrogen do we have? So we have 1, 2. Therefore, we can write it as 2H2 yields 2. Okay, let's examine what are the species that are left here. We have N2 plus, there are 2 waters, so we can write 2H2O. Okay, so from these elementary steps 1, 2, and 3, we are now able to come up with the complex reaction or the overall reaction. And our intermediate here, or intermediates rather, kasi marami sila, are the following. We have N2O2, okay, and N2O. And how do we decide if the species considered to be as intermediate? Number 1 is they become a product first, okay, they become a product first, and then the second one, they must be consumed, and they should not appear in the overall reaction, right? So this is our guidelines in determining the intermediates.